All right, y'all, got some bonus material here for you. Had to bring this story to you because I find it fascinating, and it touches on a solution that I thought was perfectly appropriate and elegant in the wake of January 6th in terms of how to deal with Trump. So this is in Raw Story. They say activists prep lawsuits and legislation to bar Trump from office if Garland doesn't indict. Now, I will say, as of this moment, I lean slightly more in the direction of Garland will indict, because the evidence has just piled up so much that I don't know how he can't. But then again, you're dealing with a former president here, and so that alone might really complicate the situation, and he might effectively bitch out of indicting Trump. But we shall see. But either way, look at what these activists are up to. So they say, on Wednesday, the New York Times reported that liberal groups are preparing legislation and lawsuits to bar former President Donald Trump from seeking the presidency again in 2024 as a contingency plan if Attorney General Merrick Garland doesn't move ahead with prosecuting the former president. The plans amount to an extraordinarily long-shot effort to accomplish what multiple investigations of Mr. Trump have failed to do: foreclose any chance that the former president could regain power whether voters want him to or not. They reflect the growing concern among Democrats and liberal activists seeking to find a way to end the political careers of the former president and the officials who helped him try to cling to the presidency, including through several new and in some cases arcane strategies. So, by the way, more than half of Americans have somebody on the ballot who's an election denier in the upcoming election. So I don't think there's any way you're going to get rid of the sentiment that these people have. Now, but is there a way you can potentially get rid of the people who actually stormed the Capitol and the people who actually facilitated it and egged it on and were directly responsible to one extent or another? Well, that's a different question. And you might be able to do that. So anyway, look at this. Democrats and some anti-Trump Republicans have grown fearful that Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, will not pursue criminal action against Mr. Trump for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election, culminating in the violent storming of the Capitol on January 6th. Even if Mr. Trump were indicted and convicted of a crime, there is no law barring even an imprisoned felon from becoming president, said the report. At the same time, Mr. Trump is the widely presumed frontrunner for the Republican presidential nomination in 2024, whose popularity with his party's base appears undiminished by the high-profile set of House hearings this year, revealing the breadth of his efforts to upend a Democratic election. So, let me just pause here to say, yes, his popularity is undiminished among the Republican base, but it is very, very diminished among every Democrat in the country, the overwhelming majority of independents, and even a decent chunk of Republicans. So, in other words, he's a threat for the Republican primary. I don't think he's nearly as big of a threat for the White House. I think he would lose a general election, and fairly conclusively at this point in time, although, again, anything is subject to change. Anyway, among the avenues being pursued are disqualifying him under the 14th Amendment's prohibition on insurrectionists holding office, which groups like Free Speech for People and Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington are testing by filing suits against local officials who participated in the January 6th attack. One such effort succeeded this week, with a court removing Cowboys for Trump founder Couy Griffin from his position as commissioner for Otero County, New Mexico, for participating in January 6th. Other activists are pressuring secretaries of state to use their powers to remove insurrection sympathizers from the ballot. Now, again, to remove the sympathizers, so to remove anybody who has the sentiment, I don't think that's possible. That strikes me as a bridge too far. If a majority of Americans have an election denier on their ballot, do you really think you're going to succeed at getting rid of hundreds of lawmakers? I don't think so. I don't think you're going to do that. But again, I think it's a different question for people who actually participated in it. And here's an example of a judge, taking action when it comes to somebody who actually stormed the Capitol and holds a government position. The judge ruled, yeah, you're gonzo. So that's, honestly, it's a little surprising, but somebody was removed. Now, again, it's a totally separate question whether or not you can get the former president on something like this. But just the fact that the ball got rolling at all, and just the fact that activists are actively working on this with legislation and with lawsuits is really interesting. They say there is a tremendous body of evidence about Donald Trump's role in the efforts to overturn the election and inciting the attack of January 6th, said Crew President Noah Bookbinder. It seems like there's a serious case to be made that it could have application to Donald Trump. All of this comes as Trump is facing another federal investigation over highly classified documents being stored at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, including a document that revealed nuclear capabilities of a foreign power. Polls have indicated that 44% of Americans believe the former president broke the law by hoarding these documents, and another 45% believe his push to overturn the election was illegal. Okay, so obviously Trump is facing a plethora of cases right now. He's got the civil case in New York against his businesses. In a worst-case scenario, or a best-case scenario, he could get the corporate death penalty for that, or he could have some very hefty fines as a result of that. There's the case in Georgia with election interference where, he made the phone call and said, find me 11,000 votes. There's actual movement on a case that's happening there, which is very interesting. Then, of course, you have the DOJ and the FBI and the classified information case. But what we're talking about here is totally separate. What we're talking about here is legislation and lawsuits around blocking somebody who attempted a coup or an insurrection from ever holding office again. Now, I understand that sounds like a long shot. I understand that sounds like crazy. But, just look at the plain-faced reading of this, okay? So, this is the 14th Amendment, Section 3. We talked about this in the wake of January 6th because it was such an elegant solution at the time. Impeachment seemed silly because Trump was going to be out of office in 5 minutes anyway, and trying to, prosecute, indict, convict on treason or whatever very lofty goal some people had struck me as an impossible bar to reach. But this, at the time, there was a window where this did not seem crazy. So Section 3, 14th Amendment of the Constitution, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector or president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. That seems pretty straightforward to me. Look, the only issue is this final part. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. So, the language of this is very clear. Like, if you've done an insurrection or a coup or attempted to do that, you can't hold public office. And I guess these activists are testing this. Hey, can we get this to stand up in court where somebody will say it's unconstitutional for Donald Trump to run for president or be president again because of this? Or, hey, can we get secretaries of state in the respective states to say, yeah, this applies, thereby banning Trump from running or holding office again? But, I do think they'll run into legal difficulties because this last line indicates Congress is the one that has to make this decision. And this is why I was prodding Congress right after January 6th. There was a short window where everybody was petrified. Everybody was, in shock about what happened that day. And there was a window where it was a long shot but possible to get 2/3 of each house to say Trump can never run and never be president again because of what happened here. Now, I don't think anybody was really thinking about 4 years in the future and Trump potentially running again, so it didn't come up. But if you remember, even fucking Mitch McConnell, went on the floor and gave a long speech about how this is beyond the pale, this is too far, and he was condemning Trump for what happened. Even people who, didn't vote to certify the election then came out and slammed January 6th, people like Ted Cruz. So there was a brief window where maybe you could have gotten something done through Congress which simply banned Trump from running for office again or becoming president again, but they didn't do it. So it's very possible they missed their window, but I'm interested to see where this goes nonetheless. Because, I think the spirit of Article 3 of the 14th Amendment is very clear. And the spirit is Trump can't run again, Trump can't be president again. But, will that actually come to fruition? I tend to doubt it, but I do want to see what happens with these lawsuits. I do want to see what happens with this legislation. We'll take it from there. But having said all that, you might not even need to go this far because, like I said, there's so many legal cases piling up against Trump there's a very good likelihood something works. But what'll happen after that, who knows? It could be pure chaos, could be a massive backlash, could be any of a number of things which are sort of scary and unhealthy for the country, but also might be necessary as a matter of principle. So we'll have to wait and see, but I wanted to keep you guys updated on this really interesting movement.